Hi everyone, I'm Stan Mallow. Welcome to Paranormal Yacker. My guest on today's show is acclaimed sex writer and witch Sophie Saint Thomas. I'll be yakking with Sophie about our book, Sex Witch, Magical Spells for Love, Lust, and Self-Protection. Sophie Saint Thomas, welcome to Paranormal Yacker.
Thank you for having me.
At what point in your life, Sophie, did your sexual needs and desires mesh with your pursuit of witchcraft, and you realized that since one complemented the other, that was the road you were going to travel?
I have always been very comfortable talking about things like the occult and also talking about things like sex. I grew up in the Caribbean. My parents literally moved down there so they wouldn't have to raise children in Reagan's America. So I don't have a lot of shame around these subjects. And I heard about sex magic from a friend after I got into the New York City occult scene. She told me basically, like, it's sex magic. Here's its history. I masturbate in the full moon and think about my book deal. And I got my book deal. And I thought, wait, like, I already think about getting money or, like, finding the love of my life when I come sometimes and imagine myself projecting that energy out to that goal so I can manifest it. So I was doing sex magic before I had a word for it. And in terms of bringing it into my career, I just really honestly saw a massive gap in what books and resources were available. There was stuff about sex magic, but I have a unique perspective of having been a sex journalist for over a decade, where I get to talk to, the people with PhDs who are researching open relationships and kinks and everything you can possibly think of. So Sex Witch is a spell book that I pitch as will actually work, because there's, traditional occult information and spells in there about sex magic and other magic just for your sexuality. I don't want to talk too long or split hairs, but sex magic is something quite particular. It's using orgasm or sexual energy to put that towards the goal. Whereas my book, Sex Witch, includes that, but it also has lots of spells and information on just how to enhance your sex life. And so I guess first came my natural instinct to try these things, and then came the knowledge, and then came, how can I present this to others that will hopefully actually make a difference in their relationships and life.
Early in your book, you mentioned summoning Lucifer to help you with a spell that would attract your dream partner to you. Why did you feel Lucifer was the one to call on for help in attracting that dream partner?
Lucifer is wonderful. The Lucifer that people who identify as Satanists, in particular non-theistic Satanists, think of is so different than what people come from Christian upbringings think about. There is no burning in hell for all eternity. It's it's a literary Satan. So Lucifer is seen as this angel who fell from heaven because of his refusal to conform, basically. So he's become beloved as a symbol of individuality. And that is very important to me. I have a non-traditional career, that includes going to sex parties and reporting on them, or going on cannabis press trips and writing about that. And in the past, I have dated people who are not always comfortable with all of that. So I knew if I was going to be performing magic to summon a partner, I needed someone who was also independent and not too worried about what the establishment thought. And so that is why I went with Lucifer for that spell I write about.
Do you recall, Sophie, the very first spell, ritual, ceremony, or incantation you did that gave you the results you were seeking and therefore confirmed your faith in the power of witchcraft?
My first major memory of that is being in middle school, and I grew up on the island of St. Thomas, but I spent a lot of time on the island of St. John, and it was a bit of a scrappy upbringing. I was like leaving this hotel because me and my friends used to break into the hotels to flirt with tourist boys, and I needed to get back home, but all I had was a one-way ferry ticket. I was too young to drive. I had no money, and I was so scared of just being stuck on this different island, which I literally was. And I looked up at the moon, and it was this big bright full moon that just made me feel so at peace. And witches throughout history have looked at the moon for a source of kind of mothering nurture and that feeling that everything's going to be okay. I just got my shit together and hitchhiked to the ferry dock and got on the ferry, used a payphone, called my parents, got a ride home, and I was safe in my bed. And that wasn't a spell per se, but that's one of the first moments where I felt like a witch.
When it comes to black magic and white magic, I would imagine if you ask most people, they will tell you they know the difference between the two. You say just about everything people think they know about black and white magic is wrong. Could you elaborate on that?
I am, in general, am not really a fan of deciding morals. I think like what is okay depends so differently from person to person. And it is worth noting that a lot of practices that we call black magic are literally hoodoo or voodoo traditions, which I was around a lot being in the Caribbean, but originate from Africa. And so frankly, they sound a little bit racist to me because they kind of are black magic, and the fact that like so many amazing parts of the occult come from black people and black traditions. And to whitewash that into this, blonde Glenda in a pink dress, the good witch, everything is just nice and sparkly, and it just doesn't really sit well with me. I like to let people make their own decisions as to what is right and wrong, but before someone goes into, splitting it down such a binary path, I would, I guess, ask them to look and consider about what's making them call that black magic or white magic.
Are sex witches of all genders, sexual orientations, and belief systems? And if they are, do they have separate covens, or do they intermingle with each other under one roof?
Well, every coven is different. I can't speak for everyone. I'm part of a few magical circles here. One is all women, and non-binary folks and trans folks are welcome. There's kind of an older generation of witches who really who practice these like moon circles and basically believe if you don't menstruate, you aren't allowed to be a witch. I think that's just so outdated. And most of the younger generations, whether it's millennial or Gen Z, tend to agree with me. I would say that men are probably left out of this the most, and I welcome all men to it. I love men, and I think that divine masculine energy, which is this fiery Mars energy of assertiveness, standing up for yourself and aggression and leadership, is just so sexy. And I know that it's kind of cool to hate on men now because they're so privileged, but I also think that men have lose out on a lot that women get when it comes to any type of emotional intimacy, when it comes to close friendships. And I think if we want to fight toxic masculinity, including them and things like covens and witchcraft is a great way to do so. So if you are a part of my coven, you can be absolutely any gender.
In Sex Witch, you give step-by-step magical spells for everything from self-love, seduction, sex, love, and protection to healing and revenge. Knowing the power of your spells and that sometimes in life you can't take back what you've already done, what advice would you give a sex witch before performing one of your spells?
Well, all my spells are rather uplifting. I think if that you want to hex or hurt someone, just, someone random, say you don't like the girl your boyfriend dated before you, that's just bullshit. And you have to be in a pretty nasty, jealous, self-loathing place to do that in the first place. So when it comes to things like, the rule of three, whatever you do will be sent back to you times three. I think if you're, say hexing some woman you've never met, who you just don't like because of this form or association, then you're probably already in a worse place than she is. Rather than just try to hex to put people down, one, think that such exercises can be very, very healing in a protective sense if this is directed towards someone who really did hurt you, such as someone who assaulted you or was abusive to you or raped you. There is a saying that says if you can't hex, you can't heal. And on the topic of revenge, in my work, both as a witch and as a sex and relationship columnist and author, I have found that if the best revenge is making other people jealous of how good you're doing, or showing someone else that you don't need them. So all of my revenge spells are really about making more money, making your career dreams come true, finding a new partner who will be right to you and treat you well. And ideally, then you're in such a great place where you're not even thinking about these old toxic people. But if they do stalk you on social media and get super jealous or smash a plate, then all the better.
If someone wants to join a sex witch coven, how would they go about finding one in their area?
I would either start in a sex positive scene or an occult scene. I am lucky personally that I live in New York City, so both of those those are available to me. In terms of sex positive scenes, there's sex clubs, there is places for people in open relationships or poly relationships to go and mingle, there's kink friendly events, there's always educational events, whether it's how to ask for sex and consent or how to do rope bondage. And I find if you go to these things in person and just start talking about something like, oh, well, I'm interested in sex magic, you're likely to find some other people who are, just as I think if you were at an occult event, at something for tarot or a talk on Satanism, and you ask people about sex magic or, sex positivity, you would also get a good response. And if they don't have these type of events in your area, I would suggest going online, because these communities are huge and thriving online. The first website I would check out is called FetLife, which is a social media network for kinky people. And I use them a lot in my work. They have groups for kinky pagans, making your own aftercare anointments out of using witchy herbs to help heal bruises from sex. There's just everything on the internet, whether it's somewhere like FetLife or Reddit. So that's a great place just to go to ask questions, meet people, and remind yourself that you're not alone in these interests.
Once someone joins a sex witch coven, is there some sort of initiation ritual they have to go through or pledge they have to make in order for them to be accepted by that coven?
I mean, ideally, there's a quite ornament orgy, but I don't know. I don't know. I'm in a coven who is just very light and friendly and welcoming, and there certainly was no sort of initiation other than making sure. And I would say this for all of my magical associations, making sure that there's no sexism, racism, transphobia, that you're just an overall accepting person. That's the main thing that I would expect. And as for individual rituals, that would have to depend on the people and how far they're willing to go.
What are the most requested sex spells people have asked you to perform for them?
To meet someone. Everyone's lonely and wants to meet someone. So, but I wouldn't necessarily, I think I would rather teach them a love spell to do themselves. And I think that would be more powerful than me doing it for them.
How do you, Sophie, and other sex witches deal with the naysayers and haters who don't understand what being a sex witch is all about? And so they try to shame you and hope that you crawl into a hole and are never seen again.
I will actually find that to be a great opportunity to talk about this, tell someone that they're wrong. And this has happened to me all the time, especially I have worked a lot with Satanists. I've worked on documentaries about Satanism. I've written about it. I've reported on it extensively. And, sometimes I forget how much that freaks people out because I personally was not raised in a Christian family. That's probably what I get the most reactions to. And someone says something, I just tell them, the truth. And I am secure in myself. I have a great partner and great friends and a great family that did take me a long time to find. But yeah, naysayers don't bother me too much.
Should viewers of Paranormal Yacker want to order Sex Witch or any of your other books, learn about the various projects you're involved with and services you offer, what is your contact information?
You can find my website is sophiesaintthomas.com, and I'm on all social media channels with the handle at the Bowie Cat. I love cats, and David Bowie is one of my magical icons. In particular, he is a fabulous glamour witch, and glamour, if you don't know, originally meant to cast a spell, and basically talks about using fashion and makeup and performance to make a stand and get what you want. And he is just so fabulous about that. And my next book, the follow-up to Sex Witch, is called Glamour Witch. So if that is of interest to you, give me a follow, and that's the best place to stay in touch.
I would love to interview with about that book, so please let me know. Sophie Saint Thomas, I thank you for being my guest on Paranormal Yacker. I wish you success with Sex Witch and hope that through your writings and advocacy, people who previously had their eyes shut will now open them and see there is no shame in sex or witchcraft, and the two are natural as well as compatible.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
Hi, everyone. I'm Stan Mallow, the Paranormal Yacker. I hope you enjoyed the interview you just watched. To be sure you don't miss any interviews on my free YouTube channel, all you have to do is press the subscribe button on your screen.